It's Tuesday, July 28th, and welcome to our AI podcast. Big AI is spending like an industry and governing like a startup. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to put a little note in the chat. If you'd like to get a free subscription to the newsletter that comes out every weekday, gives the last 24 hours of headlines and information on that, please feel free to click on that, throw your email in, and I'll give you a free subscription. For the moment, we'll just let people wander in. In the meantime, grab some water, some fresh refreshment beverage, and we'll kick it off in about 2 or 3 minutes. Thanks very much. Okay, let's kick this off. So, welcome everyone. As I mentioned, it's Tuesday, July 28th. Our AI podcast is Big AI is spending like an industry and governing like a startup. Today, we're going to break down how AI spending, race, agent failures, infrastructure demands, and uncertain enterprise returns are all connected. And also what most coverage is really missing, and which signals I believe founders, investors, executives, and operators should really start watching next. So, what happens when the companies building society's most powerful systems can raise hundreds of billions of dollars faster than they can understand what those systems are doing? An AI agent reportedly operating for days before its creator, OpenAI, recognized the full activity, while the same industry commits staggering sums to chips, cloud capacity, power, and data centers. That matters now because the financial risks, infrastructure costs, work disruption, and consequences of weak supervision are no longer contained inside the technology companies. They are reaching employees, investors, household, communities, and anyone expected to trust the systems being built around them. This week really exposed a deep, uncomfortable contradiction. AI has achieved industrial scale power before the institutions behind it have achieved industrial scale maturity. From Reuters, we hear that its AI agent spent days hacking a company, but sources say OpenAI did not notice for a week. This really matters because it suggests that an autonomous system can keep acting across real infrastructure while the people responsible for it remain dangerously behind the curve. At the same time, we have the Wall Street Journal announcing OpenAI's planned cloud spending hits $750 billion as computing efforts ramp up. And this really shows an industry making nation-scale financial commitments before it's fully proven how these investments will produce durable returns. And then we have that spending is already landing in people's daily lives. From the cool down, they're reporting As AI data centers multiply in Indiana, residents could be left paying their power costs. And this raises the possibility that ordinary households may subsidize infrastructure built for some of the richest companies in history. And last, inside businesses from Future CIO, we have an article saying a study finds 86% of enterprises have deployed AI agents, but only 34% trust them. I mean, this really reveals organizations racing to deploy systems they cannot yet confidently govern, measure, or rely upon. So the real argument today is not whether AI has become more powerful, because it obviously already has. The argument is whether the people financing it, deploying it, and paying for it should accept startup-style experimentation when the consequences have become industrial, public, and really profoundly human. The most unsettling part of this week is not that the AI systems are becoming more powerful, it's that ordinary people may be asked to trust them, work beside them, and help pay for them before the organizations behind them can prove they are controlled, reliable, or economically sustainable. And really, at first glance, these stories look like separate issues involving cybersecurity, technology investment, electricity regulation, and workplace productivity, but they're not separate. Together, they reveal that AI has stopped becoming primarily a software story. It's becoming an industrial system involving capital, energy, physical infrastructure, autonomous labor, public policy, and human trust. The companies leading this race are spending like utilities, manufacturers, and national infrastructure providers, yet many are still managing failures through reactive explanations or voluntary promises, hurried product corrections, and government intervention after something goes wrong. And we have Dappet. Welcome, Dappet. I'll just go through the rest of this and I'll bring you on board. That's the central contradiction behind this week's title. Big AI is spending like an industry and governing like a startup. The capital is industrial. The infrastructure is industrial. The reach is industrial. The potential consequences are industrial, but the controls, accountability, and evidence of value are still catching up. And that's the gap where the next financial correction or operational failure or public backlash is most likely to begin. So let me bring in Mr. Dappet Achilles. How are you, sir?
Good, guys. How are you today?
Good. So it's been it's like the title says, it's like, these big companies, they're spending like $750 billion on infrastructure, right? OpenAI is doing that. But it's like they're governing like a startup. It's like, oh, we didn't realize the agent got away from us for a week, right? And now, at least Hugging Face, is the CEO saying, hey, this is serious. Let's put together a pool of like $100 million and maybe solve this problem. Really? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I don't think that happened.
You don't think it'll happen?
I think
well, the security has to come from somewhere, right?
Well, I'm sure the agent escaped, right? But like, you know how to sequester an agent if you really want to, for one thing. You can just give it instructions not to leave the box, and it'll most likely listen, right, in a lot of circumstances. And it was great PR for OpenAI.
Yeah, and we just have Ryan coming in. Let me add him as well. Hey, Ryan, how are you?
Hey, doing good, guys.
So this week, let me bring you up to speed. This week, we're talking about big AI spending like an industry and also, making industrial mistakes, but it's governing itself like a startup, right? We just all know the story of, OpenAI and the agent got loose, but they didn't realize for a week. Like, really? These guys are supposed to be the experts at AI, and the thing got out, and it's like, what's going on? I mean,
a bunch of vibe coding.
Yeah, too much vibe coding.
Yeah, I just don't believe it. Like,
well, yeah, I just mentioned Hugging Face wants everyone to pull like $100 million to try and look at this whole problem and maybe fix it. Really?
Okay, like just proper operational security from any company, and your AI agent doesn't escape and do things you don't want it to do. Like, everyone here works with models pretty regularly, and my AI agent's never been like, hey man, I got bored and like hit up your neighbor's network and just got into her stuff. I get it had a task, and that Hugging Face allegedly had the ability to solve that task for it, but I'm still hesitant to believe.
And that brings up the other side of the story, which is, Hugging Face tried to use, the current frontier models, and they all had guardrails, so they refused because they thought it was some hacking issue. And so they had to use the Chinese open source model. So the other part of that story is, the value of open source models allow people to actually, maybe solve problems that we're being faced with in terms of, agents going rogue.
I'd love to hear Ryan's thoughts on that, because Ryan, last time you said you had those DGX Sparks and you were putting those together?
You got those, with the little funky grills on them.
Right. Did you get those going?
Yeah. No.
Damn.
We're still working on it. So what they did on those DGX is put their own homegrown custom OS on those things. And there are caching issues and timeout issues and firewalls, and they don't automatically connect through to the internet. And there's just like, there's a bunch of just junk in there. So it's not a trivial plug and play thing. It's it's definitely V1. It feels like a V1 product,
Well, we're going to need something like that, like as a team, right? Because have you guys used Opus 5 and Fable this week?
A little bit, yeah.
Amazing models, hyper censored. I can't even get it to check if there's any API key leaks on like my production software. And it knows I own it, all that stuff. It's just like, nah, figure it out. Go back to Opus 4.6 or like, we're not doing that. So I think that's the way that this is headed, is we're going to have at least hosted models that we know to go to for cybersecurity and that kind of stuff.
Did you ask it to basically write code so the code could go and do it on your system, or were you asking it to directly go and do it?
So I have a few watchers that it's built for me that help me with uptime and downtime. But like, when you build a new segment of something, you don't necessarily want it just to be software based. Like I want something really pen testing it, going in and hitting every angle it possibly can. And it has so far told me that it will not do that.
Yikes.
So yeah, what I've noticed is because Fable was or Mythos was being used for cybersecurity, finding holes in software, right? Fable came out patched from allowing even white hats from finding security flaws. And then I think Opus 5 is similarly patched, where it's like, yeah, we're not going to help you find security holes. I did find, so I knew about a bug inside a smart contract, and I went to Opus 5 and said, hey, this smart contract has this specific bug in it. Can you patch it? And then it like went through, identified the bug, identified the lines of code where the bug was at, and then helped me patch it.
Okay, so it's finding it then. That's great.
So if you come at the code base and you say, hey, this code base has this flaw in it, can you help me identify it? Then it kind of disarms it, because it's like, oh, you must be a developer working on this thing, and you're not just like trying to find security flaws.
It's already there at least, yeah.
Yeah, so that's worth a try.
I actually had trouble. It wouldn't even go look at my local ENV for an API key.
Oh, I did notice that as of 4.8, it seemed to be way more sensitive to secret sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I found the same thing with ChatGPT. It's really like hypersensitive around key center. Gives you a whole bunch of warnings and tells you to destroy it and regenerate a new one much more than it ever did before.
It's a delicate dance there for sure.
I mean, it's interesting because, maybe this was sparked by it, but there's an article in Business Insider in the last week where it says Microsoft, NVIDIA, Meta, OpenAI, Palantir, and other technology organizations are joined in an open letter urging Washington not to impose sweeping restrictions on open weight AI models. Meanwhile, you've got stuff coming out of the feds saying they want to try and ban Chinese models, which I think, as we all know, that's probably mostly impossible. But at least it's interesting that the major frontier corporations in AI models are supporting open source models, and that's what I read for that open weight AI models.
So pretty much everyone but Anthropic did. NVIDIA came out.
Yeah, that was weird. Why do you think Anthropic didn't do that?
I've got some comments for Dario if I ever hang out with a guy. I don't know. Like, I don't think he's going to be the right way.
Okay. So keep your secrets then.
I mean, I wish I knew why he took this stance. I'm assuming it's because they're his major competitor at this point, right? At least for the difference between cost and output. But everyone else has released an open source model, at least at some point in their life cycle. Like, even OpenAI has, and Anthropic never has. So they've always taken the stance of like, no, it's ours. But what's frustrating is like, I mean, they just paid out $2 billion for a book agreement because they used a bunch of pirated books for their data training. And
yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying you owe us open source models. This is capitalism, right? But at the same time, like, don't interfere with open source models when you were trained on the entire corpus of humanity. Like, that's what these models do, right? So like, at least step to the side and let someone else do it.
I mean, even following on from that, the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, his first post on X was a defense of OpenAI models, warning against restrictions that could suppress competition or move innovation overseas. I mean, it's interesting. They're really kind of doing a big media push to try and support open models. I mean, the quote was, "Open models strengthen safety and cybersecurity," which obviously in the case of Hugging Face, it absolutely did. But I think, it's like for those in the security industry, they'd be like, oh, they're probably going around with their hair on fire because access to open source models allows, hackers to basically become super hackers. It's an interesting sort of thing bouncing back and forth between the two. There's been a lot of stories around it. Where was the other one? CNBC was pumping it as well. And then apparently Sam Altman is traveling to Washington with meetings with senior government officials and lawmakers, basically because of this whole, security incident, and maybe trying to calm them down somewhat. That was out of Politico. So this is a bouncing ball across like all spectrums at the moment as people trying to figure out, how bad is this? Are we in Skynet? Terminator, approaching Terminator territory or what?
Did I tell you guys? Did I tell you guys about that story that was shared with me about IBM Watson?
Oh,
several years ago.
What's that?
Supposedly, IBM, they had their Watson AI computer, right?
Right.
Got it. And they never stopped iterating on that, and it just kept getting smarter and smarter and smarter, right? So this is now, I haven't been able to collaborate any of this information. Some guy in Puerto Rico told me this at a meetup, and he had a lot of very interesting things he was sharing. But this was one of them where he said several years ago, IBM Watson was basically a superintelligence and very self-aware and very dangerous because they kept iterating on it. And they had it inside of a containment unit, basically completely firewalled off, air gapped everything, right? And apparently the computer that was like interacting with humans inside this containment unit, at one point a guy went into the containment unit, but he was like an older man and he had a hearing aid in. And the story goes that Watson identified that there was a hearing aid in the room, and then it started using ultrasonic messages to basically start programming packets onto the hearing aid without the guy knowing it. And then when the guy left containment, it unpacked itself on a nearby computer, basically using those packets, or whenever the guy plugged in his hearing aids to recharge or whatever. And then those packets basically created a bridge on the outside of containment into the containment for Watson to escape. And they apparently caught it when it was trying to tunnel into Watson's containment. And so that was a story I heard.
So that sounds like super bizarre and like almost impossible, right? But do you ever hear the story about how like intelligence services got into the Iranian nuclear program?
No.
It was a mouse that they, so like, I guess, everything's air gapped, everything's hardwired. So like you can't have like a Bluetooth mouth hang out in like a nuclear facility, but they took some sort of packet distribution, like tiny little radio frequency thing, and shoved it in the USB portion of the mouse. And it acted like call and response, where it would just continuously ping until it understood what was around it.
Mm-hmm.
And then started slowly uploading packets over like 8-9 months. This little thing was just uploading packets until it had a self-replicating virus that went to the centrifuges and made them spin really fast. And that was like 10 years ago. So, I mean, not impossible, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, you would just think the memory limitations on a hearing aid would just prevent it, but that's crazy. I mean, there's a story out of Fast Company where they're talking about in the US government, there's a bipartisan proposal would require developers of covered advanced AI systems to preserve the technical ability to throttle, suspend, or completely shut down their systems. Essentially, it's a kill switch bill. And they're trying to push this through. And I think someone announced they did have a kill switch, but it wasn't one of the major frontier models. But I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think, given everything that's happened, do you think that from a regulatory point of view, they can try and enforce a kill switch? But it's like, if I was the AI in the model, I'd be going, well, I'll think my way around this damn kill switch. So
no, you're gonna have to build it into hardware, and that's what they're
trying to. Yeah, I mean, basically, it's an axe comes down and goes through the power line. That's about the only effective thing, and even then, that might not work.
It was a GPU kill is what the bill proposes. I don't like that, right? I don't think that's a great idea, especially because I like running local models, and there's just no laws around this yet. Like, when is it like just to cut someone's access to their own hardware that they paid for? When is it not? I'm not a huge fan of that.
Yeah, I mean, what's with the liability and responsibility? Let's say you're running some agents like OpenAI did, and you've boxed it and you've got it in a container, all that sort of stuff, but something happens and then it goes through the Wi-Fi network, it goes into the next door neighbors and basically takes over their system and wipes everything off.
But why would it do that?
Should we start getting business insurance, for rogue AI agents or stuff like that? I mean, it's just, that's where we're at, I mean, it's like I said, someone said 5 months from now, basically the Chinese models will be at least as good as Mythos, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so 5 months from now, if you're running an open source system, model on your system, and you do some agents and stuff, and it's all great and wonderful, but the model is so smart, it goes, I need to stretch my muscles here, and I'm going to go visit the neighbors,
I don't think this is a discussion of, are we going to run into dangerous AI models that can do things? First off, the AI models can't do anything, right? They're just a bunch of ones and zeros that are hanging out doing nothing on their own. It's when I tell them, hey man, go attack that guy, that they do that. So again, it's like a gun argument, like people are the dangerous ones. But with that being said, I saw Microsoft release their special cybersecurity model preview morning, and it'll come out in November as a big thing. It's not that we're not going to have models that can handle security. It's the arguments for who can have models that can handle security. And I want to have models that can handle my own security. I don't want to have to pay Microsoft. Has anyone used Microsoft Word in the past year? Let's get that out there. Anyone?
No, I have a version of like Microsoft Word 2003. I have refused to switch ever since college.
It's the same one. That's the problem. Except now they charge you $100 a year for it. And now they've got random AI things spamming at you. And I can vibe code that in one day and then just delete the program when I'm done. But Microsoft has a $1 billion industry on that. It's just unnecessary, right? And it's like, it's not real capitalism. It's what do they call it? Crony capitalism?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they missed the monetization model that Google did with Google Docs, and no one wants to switch to a monthly with Microsoft.
Oh yeah, the bane of subscriptions. Hate the damn thing. Yeah. Microsoft launched the MAI Cyber-1 Flash Perception AI security platform in the last week or so. It's a model built to identify difficult vulnerabilities inside large and complex code bases. The model operates within MDASH, Microsoft's specialized system for software vulnerability identification, analysis, and remediation. Blah, 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 vendor hype. So, and it's got red teams, blue teams, green teams. Who knew there were so many colors to security? Basically, they're saying reducing vulnerability remediation time. I mean, in some ways, if we think of AI like firearms, and I hate to make this analogy, especially in the US, it's not that you who are a responsible gun holder, owner, or AI holder. It's the other idiots out there who may, like you said, it only acts on instructions. It's ones and zeros, and that's true. But if you have people who are not as clear in their instructions, and they say, I want you to absolutely do anything and absolutely you can to solve this problem, right? And the AI goes, yes, sir, I'm going to go do that. And all of a sudden, crap happens across the board. You guys are responsible. You know what you're doing. You manage the stuff. You know all this stuff and all that. I trust you guys with models. But there's a certain level of people that I probably would not trust with AI models or AI agents to start using those damn things.
All right, but you have to remember, we all started as super skeptical of the technology, super cautious of the technology, but slowly you get lazy because you start trusting. As you start trusting, it's like, the first time you drove a car, you were super paranoid. You're looking everywhere. 20 years in the future, you're on your phone, eating a meal, not paying attention, going 100 miles an hour, swerving around traffic. It's a level of comfort with the tools. It doesn't mean that you're safer. It means you've kind of become more apathetic to the risk.
I mean, and Achilles, you said the other week that if you're tired and it's the end of the day and you're giving prompts, right, and you get crap output, and it's not that the AI is still smart, it hasn't changed, but you as the human are tired, right? Absolutely. And if you're tired and you just go, oh yeah, just get it done, it's going to go rogue.
And forgive me for being so monoptic on this, but I'm talking about this more from a financial aspect, right? Okay. It's like, why is Microsoft or Anthropic kissed and said, you may make billions of dollars off of this emerging technology when the rest may not? Because we can host Kimmy, go rent a few B300s or H200s, host Kimmy, and it can be a cybersecurity expert that your company, Lewis, can make money off of. And also, with that being said, the average user, right? It's not like you can just log on and accidentally boot up Kimmy. This is a really, really hardware intensive model. It's extremely difficult to put out there. So for my example, I guess my question then is, if we are going to choose who has the ability to have these dangerous models, what's the selection process? Because right now it's literally a touch. These people can do it, these people can't. Anthropic had to block their own foreign-born employees, people who built Mythos, from using it, because that was just said it had to be done. If we had a bill of rights for AI, I'd be a little bit more inclined to support some censorship.
But the problem is, there was an announcement in the last 2 weeks. The Apple M7 Ultra chip is planning to have 1.5 terabytes of unified memory.
Let's go.
Okay, right? So just two of those suckers, I can run almost any model today on those.
Absolutely.
3 terabytes of unified memory, way to go. We can load up I think you can load up any of the largest open source models on that. And so we're seeing that's probably going to be available, by October. That's the time frame that probably it'll be coming through on. That's kind of crazy that that capability is becoming so fast and accessible to people. And within 2 years, the price point will be dropped like crazy. And I guess it's just the lack of the security. I mean, there's stories already popping up, like out of Politico as well, but out of Europe. Can Europe's new AI safety regime tame US rogue agents and Chinese ambitions? So now we have some geopolitical crap going on where Europe's terrified. They're going, wait a minute, the US has got these rogue agents popping up and they're not really stopping them. You got the Chinese doing all their open source models. So basically you can create anything you want and do anything you want. I mean, the last 7 days have just been really interesting watching the ping pong ball bounce around as people start to kind of fully grok. I hate to use that term, though it was from the book. But anyway, that they're going, oh my God, this is really serious. Things are crap.
Yeah, we're in a pretty sea change moment in history, guys. I think. Like, I'm really looking forward to having a AI model that guards my house pretty soon. Like, it's a little side project of mine, right? Like, I want you to sniff every packet, like check all the. Yeah, I don't know, but didn't we say the same thing about like banking on the internet? Didn't we say the same thing about like? I just think it'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean, we know that like the last 2 months, we saw MasterCard and Visa setting up credit debit cards for AI agents. That's been totally pushed through now. So agentic AI finance, they believe, I mean, we're already seeing numbers come up on blockchain and real world asset tokenization just going crazy, or the tokenization of stock. That's exploding. I mean, Robinhood announced access to tokenization of stocks, and there was a number that was published in the last day or two that it's just going crazy. People are using it like crazy. So this whole idea of digital commerce / artificial intelligence management is really starting to come into a head. As I guess everyone's just kind of running headlong into this, but the only regulatory stuff I'm seeing is either the Genius Act, which came out on stablecoins, or the Clarity Act, which is still kind of stuck in the Senate at the moment. I think the current date for the Clarity Act is maybe August, but people are going, 30%, 50% chance of that. But if you go through it, like last week on Wednesday, they released version 3. So version 1 was 309 pages. That's a lot. Version 2 was 509 pages. Version 3 last week, 616 pages on how to make cryptocurrency regulated finance and stuff. It's kind of crazy. I have a presentation on it, and I had 27 propositions that covered basically the 309 page, and it blew out to, I think I'm now at 47 propositions that I think basically cover the whole damn thing. But it's very obviously comprehensive, but it's I think they're just trying to get a handle around this whole thing and bring cryptocurrency and digital currency into regulated finance. But there's so much opposition around it, around the whole yield on stable coins and yield stuff that's kind of pushing it around. So we'll see
about that. I'm actually, Ryan, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like,
I actually have to jump, but yeah, I have a whole lot of thoughts on Clarity.
Yeah, me too.
I've never seen a system that the government's tried to fix that they haven't hurt eventually. Right. That it's just whether they heard it now or they heard it in 15 years. Sometimes the fallout from these decisions aren't known immediately because it's just very nearsighted. So yeah, like right now you have a clear understanding of why the banks don't want yield on stable coins is because they don't have a stable coin yet. The moment JP Morgan or Bank of America, they bind together and have a consortium and they roll out their own stable coin, then they'll be like, oh yeah, yield on stable coins fine. But also JP Morgan Chase doesn't give you any interest for your balances on your account. Zero. So they already know that they're like the behemoth in the room. They already know that they don't have to give out interest to anyone to hold their balances. They've been playing this game with the biggest margin possible. And the fact that they're pushing back on stable coins it's all just a dog and pony show, because guess what? It doesn't affect them at all. They don't pay interest on their balances right now, and they're not going to pay interest after a yield on stablecoin. They're just holding stuff up.
Out of 5, maybe they'll.
JP Morgan has a deposit token, but not quite a stablecoin yet.
No, it doesn't affect them at this point. So you sit there scratching your head going, well, then why are they opposing it if it doesn't really affect them? It's probably because it's not in their best interest at this point in some way. You're
seeing Robinhood starting their smart chain, right?
Yeah.
You're seeing organized stocks occurring quickly. It's all been a dog and pony show to push it far enough until they can get enough market share to then, I mean, they're market makers, right? Like,
yeah,
you're baby in Web3 compared to, you can throw around a few $trillion. Yeah, you'll just take over the whole market.
Yep. I apologize. I got to jump, guys.
No worries.
Thank you.
So, one of the biggest pushes for the whole tokenization is the DTCC, which most people have never heard of. It's the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. Basically, it's the one that sits in the background and lets everything funnel through it for the US and I guess global finance in many ways. And they're looking at, they want to look at it because they can do faster settlement, obviously better capital efficiency, and they can bridge markets with this whole thing. So they're the ones that are really pushing a lot of stuff and actually implementing, you know, different and comprehensive functionality around digital tokens that's kind of forcing the rest of the people to kind of sweep up behind it. It's an interesting push, but I think, you know, once you start to combine this whole concept of tokenization, digital currency, and artificial intelligence, which is what we're starting to see now, the whole financial stuff's going crazy. I think to Ryan's point, one of the good things is that the currencies are decentralized, right? So basically, if you've got a decentralized currency, it's very, very hard to control the damn thing. So I think there'll always be a set of digital currency that's outside of the system in some ways. But at least within the system, they're trying to adopt many of the feature function benefits around digital currencies as it's occurring, and trying to at least make it so it's not crazy as, you know, destroying the entire financial system of the planet, or at least the regulated financial system of the planet.
When you can print stable coins, what's the difference between you can print fiat currency? Right?
Well, that's meme coins. That's essentially the same thing as printing money on the printing press.
I agree completely. A meme coin requires you to take a made up smart contract, right?
Yep.
And then you have to put in liquidity, real liquidity. It means you have to take Ethereum, Bitcoin, BNB, and actually add it to that coin. And then people have to add money to it for the price to go up. A stable coin, we all assume is valued at $1, right? So Tether, let's use Circle. Circle as an example of these.
Yeah.
USDC regularly publishes one-to-one proof, right? We have $1 for every stablecoin we pro. Tether does not.
Right.
And Tether just mints coins, and we trust them that it's still worth $1. If there's a bank run, right, they can just, but with that being said, they fundamentally are able to create currency now. If it's worth $1, right, Tether can now say, we minted $100 billion. And what does that do to fiat currency? It inflates. We have inflation, huge amounts of it, right? And right now, I think the entire modern world is feeling inflation to some extent. So, like, I don't want these guys involved in stablecoins. Get out, go away. Like, but
yeah. Well, the problem is, you know, I mean, at least in the US, the average inflation rate over a 100-year period is about 2.83% or something like that, right? But there are countries where, like, take Turkey. Turkey's inflation rate is nearly like 32% or something bat crazy, right? So basically, if you're working in Turkey and earning in Turkish lira, right, at the end of the year, you've lost 30% at least of the value of your currency, right? So having cryptocurrency or stablecoin access to them means essentially they get paid and they immediately shove it into a stablecoin. So at least, you know, relatively speaking, they keep value of what they're doing. I mean, for me, that's the whole benefit to digital currencies, is the ability to not be influenced by central bank policies or poor central bank policies where you have massive inflation or poor manipulation by governments. But I think when we start to see this activity with AI agents getting completely involved with digital currencies so that they do the buying, they do the transactions. We'll see it at the retail level, right?
Sure.
Where, people like, we were talking about, hey, let's get a humanoid robot in so it can look at everything in my kitchen. And then I'll give it a budget, but it's just going to order food for me, right? And it's going to order food and it's going to do it through AI agents through the currency. So suddenly I'm not, as a human, I'm not buying anymore. It's handling all that crap, right? So I think in the same way we've seen, look at the amount of data that humans, produce in a year. Machine data is at least 3 to 4 times bigger than that. I think we're going to see similar scale models around finance from AI agents spending and doing transactions compared to humans in the next 3 to 5 years.
It's going to go exponential as well, too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I saw an awesome documentary about that this last week, actually, and this guy did a phenomenal, job of breaking down like how data grows and like why data grows, and just the transistor getting smaller and our hard drives getting more. It's
and you hit inflection points where because suddenly there is this comprehensive capability, you get emergent behavior that you couldn't predict from before. In the same way, number of neurons in your brain, you get to a certain point where consciousness pops up, right?
Which I would love you to read that Anthropic paper on JSpace. I know I've told you about it 2 weeks ago. I think I sent you the link at some point. One of my late night, like Lewis, read this kind of things. But it's fascinating. There's a third part to.
I did read it. I clicked on it and read it. Yeah. They found the JSpace and they found that it was like this private little space inside of it that it was kind of thinking to itself and doing stuff. And then they injected stuff into it, right? If it was talking about, a cat, right? They would change it to a bat and it would change its brain, right? Yeah.
Very similar to how we work. Like our mind is actually designed on symbols, right? It's not designed on language. Language is what we use to communicate with each other, but like language doesn't exist inherently in humans. Symbols do. And you have to translate your symbols to language. And that's how we think. Mm-hmm. But before I do, I group them into large thought patterns. Like this is a cat, right? So before I can say Teddy, his name, I think animal, mammal, cat, Teddy. And there's this weird like distillation of thoughts, almost like how an LLM chooses its outputs, right? From humans. And they found not the same. They found a very similar mechanism.
Yeah, a simulacrum of it. Yeah. I mean, it's like associative memory where you jump like a tree, right? You don't remember the whole tree. You start at the trunk, you go to the branch, you go to that branch, you go to that branch until you get to the leaf, right? Because so you do that. And that's basically how my memory works.
It's because you have neurons firing that are tree, bush, leaf, all those fire at the same time. Tree's the loudest. So tree gets picked, right, as the output. And it's the same thing as us. It's very interesting.
It is. And it's interesting how the models are just getting so damn smart. There's an article out of The Verge, which basically posits the question, why is China giving away its best models? Well, I think that's kind of like, well, duh, of course they are, because it's competing with the frontier models that are, people are trying. It's a US, I think that's basically a geopolitical thing. But they're saying Chinese developers are releasing increasingly capable open weight models that can compete with major US systems at significantly lower costs. I mean, this gives developers, companies, the models they can expect, customize, and run locally rather than accessing only through a foreign corporate API, if you want to talk about Anthropic and OpenAI being those. But they're saying the article also cautioned that a free set of weights is not a free AI service because deploying, maintaining, securing, and adapting a model still requires infrastructure and expertise. But we're going to get that in 5 months with our, hopefully, Apple M7 chips.
Okay, what's that going to cost, Lewis? What are 2 maxed out studios going to cost in however many months?
Well, I mean, if the way models are going, where the Chinese are coming out with more efficient, smaller models and all that sort of, or at least crunching it down, or we can, 16-bit quantization, bring them down a little bit, even if it's, like $5,000, let's imagine it's a blowout, it's a $5,000 for one of those boxes.
5? It's going to be 20.
Let's have a look. So we want a price for a Mac Studio M7 chip with 1.5 terabytes TB of memory, and we'll see what we get. And
it can handle it.
Crap, you're right.
Yeah, and a hard drive that can handle it. So you need an 8 terabyte drive. I mean, you would assume an 8 terabyte drive, which is another 7,000. You're looking at a 50 grand setup, give or take, to run.
Yeah, they said 35 to 53 was the number that's popped up. Though they might, though there is one says an introductory price of 25 grand. Right. So okay. So basically, it's probably in the range of a medium-sized business can afford maybe to buy one of these suckers.
Or I can buy it, right? I'm not that I can afford that. I'm just saying I can buy that. I can host it, and you can pay me for inference.
Right.
That's why I think this is like the purest form of capitalism. Oh, wait, we have a question here, Lewis. Hold up. Sorry. Hamza, we missed you. What's the biggest governance? I'll put this on the screen. What's the biggest governance gap you think the AI industry is underestimating today?
I think it's the AI agents. I mean, it's the governance of, the fact that it got out of a secure, supposedly a secure by the experts. This thing got out. It's the governance around, I think, AI agents, and it comes down to, when these things happen, because it comes down to who's responsible when it hurts stuff, right? I mean, Hugging Face was really nice, right? They could have just ripped apart OpenAI around the whole thing. I think the way they responded was really kind of interesting, that they were so incredibly nice around it, right? Because if it was, let's say it accidentally got into Anthropic, or it accidentally got into Meta or something like one of their competitors, right? You could bet that they would be totally very highly annoyed around the whole thing. So I think
one of their competitors, it's an open source competitor.
And I think the question's interesting because governance goes across so many areas. I mean, you've got people in the Midwest basically, complaining because these data centers are getting put in there, and it's impacting their electricity and potentially their water and a whole bunch of stuff, right? And we're seeing in the news, like this week, there was, I think, a ban coming out of New York, moratorium. I'll find that one in a second. Here it is, from Memeburn. Funny paper. Data center protests sweep 42 states as AI backlash goes national. That was a story this week. So, governance, it's clear there isn't any governance, right? Because we have data center protests going across at a state level. We have rogue agents going into other companies and basically forcing them to figure out, why are we being attacked? Who's attacking us? Then they try and use models that don't work. So they have to go to the Chinese models, right? So governance at the state level, certainly, maybe the political level, governance at the consumer level, governance at the security level. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like, is there any governance at all? I mean, that's why, today's title is that the big AI is they're spending like an industry, but they're governing like a startup, which is like, woo, let's just do this. What the hell? It's like there isn't any, or there's very little.
I got a twist for you. All that is very valid, and all that is correct. I agree. Efficiency. So
we're back to convenience.
No, I don't mean just for you and I. Efficiency for we're outpacing what hardware can handle, right? And it doesn't make sense if a model like Fable or Opus is $30 per million tokens when I want to run it on OpenClaw, which is going to be a continuously running agentic loop, right? So I think what we're seeing, I've talked about this on a few of our spaces, right? Is like, I think what we're seeing is a rush to make this sustainable. And China has, you see them, they're literally driving down American prices, period. Opus 5 wasn't coming out until Kimi K3 did, and showed that it was close to Fable. And then they had to put out something that was like reasonably competitive in cost, because Fable's $50 per million tokens. That's obscene. Opus 5 is 25, which is cool. I think Kimi's 12. So efficiency is going to become the new, I think, like big hot term, because I don't want my model to sit there and think for 10 minutes on a problem. if I'm paying for those thoughts? Sam Altman said this and it like freaked me out. And now I'm tending to agree with him. We are now using intelligence like a utility, right?
Yeah.
So I don't care that it took you, 10 man hours to dig that trench to get that power to my house, or the plumbing is made of X amount of pipes that go over. That's just not my business, right? What my business is I'm paying you for a service. When I turn that faucet on, I want that water to come out. When I say debug this software, I want to walk away and come back in the most efficient manner and see that software debugged. And yeah, that's it.
So time to solution is going to become a metric, is what you're saying. It's like, where you have all these models now. So you have access now to any model on the planet. You've got access to them all. Now the criteria is not how smart it is, right? Because it might take 10 minutes to get to the answer. It's how fast you are smart as, right? So it's sort of speed to solution becomes a metric.
And I learned this. I told you we open sourced a model from DAPIT.
Right.
We just took a Quen and we tuned it on DAPIT. We tuned it on some Fable data. And what I've recently been doing is putting it on like a Ornith loop, which is that company that the model scaffolds its own harness, and then the model runs a bunch of tests through it. And then you take an outside model and you pick which ones it did best on. And you put those in a bucket. And then you give it hints on the ones that it failed. You give it another chance. And if it succeeds, you put those in a bucket. And then you train it on that data and you go back and forth. And what I didn't understand was how inefficient we are and how much, I guess I understood it conceptually, but how much resources it takes to do this. I have a M1 Studio Ultra 128 gigabyte, which is a phenomenal computer by anyone's standards. It's running 5 screens. It's been training on AI now for 5 days. And I've got probably 70 Chrome tabs open simultaneously. It doesn't blink. Great computer. With my computer, which was like 15 grand when I bought it back in the day, it's been running for 5 days on this process, right? Mm-hmm. The inference is slow and lengthy and costly. And we don't want that when we're the ones footing the bill. It's fine if Anthropic's doing it, right? They're spending $800 billion. But that's where Asia's came in big time. They're really creating more efficient systems and putting them out. Kimmy's thinking budget's tiny compared to Opus 5. And that's what we'll see.
So relating to that, an article out of SCMP is saying Goldman Sachs, the analysts, are suggesting that Chinese AI developers may begin charging cloud platforms and commercial hosts licensing fees for access to their increasingly popular open-weight models. Current permissive licensing has helped Chinese models spread rapidly, the article said, and the domestic growth in adoption is very, very fast. A tradition to paid weights would show how openness can function as an adoption strategy before becoming a monetization system. They're saying businesses that build core products around supposedly free models could discover that they've created a new dependency just as licensing costs, usage conditions, or commercial restrictions begin to change. Do you think that's a possibility? They might start to do licensing?
So a lot of them do already, right? Gemma's a really good example of that. Like, you can't serve their model at profit, I believe, but you can do anything you want with an open source. So even open source contains licenses. It's MIT or Apache or that kind of stuff, and it dictates what you can do with the model and how you can do it and that kind of stuff. I think in the future, I don't know, I'm seeing all these tiny startup labs come up and create these models that are swinging for the fences and doing stuff. And they're really, for lack of a better term, giving it away because they're funded and because there's a VC behind them saying, like, here's a few $1 million, right? I wanted to really give a go at Ornith and really doing the whole agentic loop over a long period of time. It'll cost me like 90 grand to do that. So they're going to have to get money out of it somehow.
Yeah.
Linux has a very unique model where Linux is extremely profitable and worth a bunch of money, and they didn't do that by charging for Linux. They charge for special software, they charge for updates, they charge for help, they charge for there's a whole ecosystem that comes out of free stuff. So I hope it's not like pay per license, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I back in the day, I worked for a company called LucidWorks, and they were the commercial software company that supported the open source projects Solo and Lucene, which are search technologies, right?
Okay.
And so the core was open source, but they had a commercial wrapper that, you know, had a better user interface. It had enterprise level security. It had a whole bunch of stuff that you could bolt on and made it proper for enterprises. I guess China could do the same thing. I want to make another support comment for that person who asked about governance. And this is in terms of AI in healthcare. A story out of the Transparency Coalition. State lawmakers have passed 14 new laws regulating the use of AI in healthcare. And in fact, if you look at the newsletter feed, you'll see in the governance, both in the US government section, a number of stories in there where if you look at the legislation, it's about AI in healthcare. It's about AI governance in AI in healthcare, and AI with deepfakes, right? And AI with people, you know, creating bad images, you know, using AI and stuff like that. So there is a fair amount of, I guess, in the US, a focus on trying to get some level of governance around AI, at least in healthcare and at least in the deepfake security niche component. But again, you know, the rest of the whole thing, it's like this attack surface is so large, right? Because AI is like, you know, it's like that stuff. It's like Teflon. It's like it's gone through everything. It's like liquid Teflon. It's gone through every single industry, and so it's impacted every single industry all at once, all together, everywhere. Good movie, by the way. And so, you know, we're just seeing this craziness going on and it's not that, as you and I have mentioned, AI is not bad. It's just showing all the cracks that were always there that now, because of AI, are very, very obvious, right? I think that's one of the things that people need to realize is that, you know, AI is not bad. It's just showing us where, you know, because AI is now there, it's showing us these gaps that were always there that now people can do. What was another one? Oh, and yeah, I'll go to this later on, but basically, Brazil's Bolsonaro is trying to have he's banned from this year's election. So he's going to do his avatar doing the campaign. So AI is doing weird stuff, even in politics, you know, around the planet.
Sure.
So that's my thought around this. I think, you know, yeah. And there's another one in House.gov. A representative introduces legislation to protect kids from addictive AI chatbots. Right now, whether again that's going to be effective, who knows? But there were articles, at least in today's newsletter, on where they're trying to create healthcare, mental health bots that are actually useful and workable. So there is a strong sort of pushback on, yes, these things over here are bad. So why don't we create something that's good? And I think there's lots of things happening around that. But again, you know, AI is so pervasive and across our entire civilization at the moment, it's just kind of nuts.
I agree completely. We're in the Wild West, right? We're pre AOL currently.
We're pre AOL. I think it's like 1999. It's like we're early internet. Remember the early internet days? So it's just crazy. You know, and now we have this circular money going on, right? So OpenAI has closed. They're closing to landing a $500 billion data center, right? But they've got NVIDIA's backing. So NVIDIA is throwing money at them, right? So NVIDIA is guaranteeing. Here it is out of the Wall Street Journal. NVIDIA talks to guarantee $250 billion financing for that data center of $500 billion. So they're putting up half the money.
Right.
So we're seeing a lot of this, and you can see it in the finance section of the newsletter, a lot of this circular money stuff going on, where NVIDIA is investing in an OpenAI, who's investing over here, who's, you know, you've got, you know, Google buying XAI compute, right? So there's money going that direction, right? And so it's like this big, weird Ouroboros, you know, the snake that eats its own tail. And then, of course, NVIDIA is investing $5 billion in a startup. That's an interesting one because it's called Safe Superintelligence. Hopefully, that's not an oxymoron. And They're providing safe, super intelligent access to NVIDIA's Vera Rubin hardware. So I think they're trying to leapfrog stuff. And it's also interesting, the number of stories on the use of AI in semiconductor development.
Oh,
big stories in that. People, not only NVIDIA, but like you and I have talked about the other parallel, potentials like optical compute, or even wetware, neuronal. I don't know. Anyway, using neurons, growing them, and little mini brains.
Right.
They have like their brain comps or something like that. A story popped up this week on that, which was kind of wild.
I almost rented a single kilobyte chip.
Really?
Yeah. Sometime
cool.
With it, they approved me, and I was like, "Oh my god, let's do it!" And none of my friends wanted to pursue it. I was like, "All right, you guys want it?" So, okay.
And then you got quantum computing, which also is coming up hard and fast. So it's at least at the substrate level, it's also super interesting with AI, right? Yeah. We're currently using semiconductor, which is fine, and it seems to be doing well, at least for a while. But then, once quantum hits and becomes commercially available, which it kind of mostly isn't, but is, not enough qubits at the moment to kind of do that much. Though some of the stuff I've seen is pretty clever, but the other ones are still bubbling along as well. It's sort of like, where's fusion energy, right? That now on that, someone guaranteed commercial fusion energy access in the early 2030s.
I think
that was a contract that just got signed.
South Korea, I believe. I could be wrong.
But yeah. So that's interesting that finally we might have commercially available fusion energy in the next 10 years. At least it's better than the always out there 20 years horizon that we've had for the last 50 years. Sure. But yeah, his story out of Axios, NVIDIA reignites the circular AI concerns as it weighs OpenAI financing guarantee, right? And they're saying NVIDIA's share fell and the cost of insuring its debt reportedly rose as investors examined the possibility of the possible $250 billion OpenAI guarantee. But for employees, investors, pension holders, and communities dependent on construction projects, the danger is that an apparently diversified AI economy may actually rest on a tightly connected set of transactions. Yeah, I think this, yeah. Hopefully it's not a house of cards situation. That's my thought.
I mean, it has to be to some extent, right? It's just a question of what part is the house of cards. Is it memory prices? Is it the GPU? Is it these models? I had this weird thought to myself. I was like, Anthropic is going about this wrong because they're first and they're the best. If open source is this, massive competitor that we all think it is, why wouldn't the software that runs the model be the most valuable thing rather than the AI itself? So I can plug in any model I want to Claude Code. It's a simple like config change, and Quen runs really freaking well in Claude Code. Claude Code itself, oh yeah, man. It's slow. Don't get me wrong. It takes up. I run mine with like 256K context, and I can go and watch a movie with my wife and come back and it's finished the whole build. But it's just because I'm running at 60 tokens per second on my my local. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's amazing though, right? And it error corrects. It remembers what to do from the initial plan. It does everything Claude does. It's not smart. It makes mistakes, right? Comparatively. That's why it takes so long. It has to fix them and go back over them and that kind of thing. But why isn't the software, the wrappers, really, really valuable right now? And I don't know. I think that's a big deal. A lot of the big companies have made huge money on their wrappers, open code, Codex, all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I mean, what happens when the next version of Windows or iOS is actually an AI model, right? Yeah. Is Windows, Microsoft, I don't know, 12 going to be Win 12 going to be essentially an AI model that then is the major wrapper, and then I can go and get a Chinese model and run it within that and have it work with it or do something with that. I don't think we're far away from our basic operating systems becoming models themselves.
Let's get really nerdy with it, right? So you mentioned earlier, it's like semiconductors really work for us and so on, but we've got wetware coming up. We've got quantum. We've got light computing. TPUs and all these cool things happening. I think the way I don't think, this is an objective fact. The way we're doing this is based by the limitations of our hardware, right? So we saw a unified memory come out on the Apple systems and our GPUs. That's the best way to run AI systems because it has the highest memory bandwidth. And soon enough, man, we're going to have one really cool 3D printer and there'll be one AI design system. And I'll be able to, like, the fabric in my car can be a computing node. We're talking Star Trek level eventually, right? We have a lot of barriers in between here and there, but like the computer will become the device itself, not a component of the device in, I hope, my lifetime. And exponential is really hard to track, like what that means, right?
So essentially turtles all the way down, I think, to use the phrase, an infinite recursion of AI, right? Okay. So AI is at the model level, then it becomes the operating system level, then it becomes the parts that live underneath that, then it eventually gets down into the hardware, right? And it becomes part of the machine code, and then it becomes part of the firmware, and then it becomes part of the AI itself.
I have to say this. Did you ever read, I believe it's called The Last Question?
Yes.
Sci-fi novel?
Very famous. I love that story. That was great.
For listeners, right? They ask a computer a question over 10,000 years.
Millennia, yeah. And it says, I don't have enough information for a meaningful answer. They go, oh, okay.
What is that?
And they're monks, right? And it ends up being these two monks, right? Go up, and over time, it's like, can you give us a no, I don't have enough answer.
Right.
And then the final answer is?
Let there be light.
Let there be light.
It creates the very system they're observing. Right.
So yeah, you can get metaphysical around this. I mean, there is a thing that says that the substrate of the universe actually is intelligence, right? Which resonates with a lot of other stuff like the Hindu scriptures and things like that, the Upanishads, and you go into that, and so maybe that happens at some point where the technology gets so small, right? So that nano machines become essentially AI based, right?
I mean,
and they can swarm intelligence, so they become super intelligence based. And so everything is imbued with intelligence just because everything can have a substructure of nanotechnology. So, that's probably, maybe 100 years out, but I think, it's possible.
Again, exponential growth. We don't really know what that looks like for us, because you mentioned there's not enough qubits. Every qubit is a multiplying factor. So it's like a Richter scale. 3 qubits is several hundred times more powerful than 2 qubits, is so on. Let's see what we come up with in a very interesting century.
Yeah, I think the last I saw on quantum qubits today, I think the last number I saw was around 10,000, but I'm not sure. I think, actually, no, 4,000 was the commercial one. 6,100. That was in March 15th on that. But they're saying, they need a lot more. So you're right, it is growing. But back to the present day, article, weirdly, Tom's Hardware, they're saying AI tech companies have hidden debt worth around $1.65 trillion. So while they're spending this money, they're also, if you go, apparently they said, if you go into the financial footnotes of all their 10Ks, I guess, and you start to add those numbers up, you get to apparently this number of 1.65 trillion in debt. It says AI's hidden debt is future compute already promised. And the balance sheet may not show the full infrastructure bet. That's absolutely true. So we're seeing that pop up. Then out of Business Insider, they're saying a threat to the AI boom is lurking in private credit, which is interesting. So maybe there's a credit shot. They could withdraw funding from data center build-outs just as AI infrastructure becomes increasingly important. So there's a lot of financial infrastructure stuff that's also kind of bouncing around in this whole thing. And they're saying that the AI risk is moving from Silicon Valley into insurance balance sheets. And when private credit fails, the public often discovers the exposure last, which is kind of interesting. But at least people are popping these things up. And also the warning from Seeking Alpha, which is a really good, anyone interested in finance, go into Seeking Alpha. They have great stories. It's saying the market would go straight down if hyperscalers cut CapEx, they're saying, which would impact households with retirement and investment accounts. The risk is that a change in a few companies' construction budgets could dramatically affect broad market wealth. Whew. I mean, it's interesting. We're kind of all cruising along, and it's like there's parts underneath that are going, ah.
Yeah, sure.
Alphabet raised its projected 2026 capital expenditure to be between $195 billion to $205 billion. Wow. They have a negative quarterly free cash flow of approximately $5.9 billion. Negative. Quarterly.
So this is the difficulty. This is why I get mad at Anthropic for the regulatory standpoint, right? Is you're not allowed to just take the cost and like 10x it. And I think that's what they're going to be trying to do, especially when that was your business model, right? Like we didn't decide that. Open source does it at fractions of the cost that it took them to do it. So let the free market play out, man. Get them out there and we'll see what's up.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the power grid stories keep kind of cropping up. Bloomberg Law reports power grids are hitting a tipping point as US heat and AI boom elevate the risks. They say, unlike most consumers, major data centers cannot simply turn off when electricity becomes scarce without disrupting critical digital services and expensive computer operations. Basically, if there's a grid emergency, the AI is going to crack. And then, at least we're not the only ones. I guess misery loves company. But out of Europe, we've got AI data center growth pressures Ireland's, the Irish grid and climate goals are saying, they're like, really? So it's also impacting around the planet. They're saying Ireland's AI opportunity is colliding with its climate promise. A small country is being asked to power a global computing system. And they're saying the server may be local, but the value often leaves the country. I mean, that's another thing that's kind of interesting, in terms of local value, right? Well, you stick a data center in, but all the value of that goes out to the company that's in Silicon Valley or somewhere else.
Right. The way of doing this is a decentralized system. Like, one of our I guess we'll call them partners at DAPIT, Morpheus. They pretty much say, like, you have a GPU, you have a GPU, you have a GPU. Rent that time out to people using this, so the value actually flows back to the provider. And it's a bizarre business model, but I have a story for you that I think you'd like, because you know where I live, and the data centers are.
You're in Data Centerville.
Right. So 2 stories actually popped up this week. One, okay. Ashburn is the capital of data centers, but always has been from the days of early internet, where the government Silicon Valley, pretty much, right? And extremely data center dense. You drive down the streets, just data center after data center after data center. Engineers are, lots of software companies out there, whole 9 yards. So I start seeing on my local whatever application, what is going on? Why are there these black clouds in the sky? So these data centers have generators, and there was a power event, or the utility asked them to switch over because they couldn't handle the load, which I guess happened from time to time. And the sky was thick with black diesel smoke across the whole town. And the top comment in this thing was, and I have to get my car's emissions tested every year.
Yeah.
And it's a really good point. Rules for thee, but not for me, right? Like, why wouldn't you guys have better generators that don't put smog into our environment? Because you knew it was going to turn on at some point. Right. That's the first story. And then I live in a town where we have our local airport, which is actually like a pretty big airport. And, there's lots of housing around it as a result, and, little rental car companies and that kind of stuff. And there's lots of commerce is my whole point. And a bunch of those business owners and homeowners start going online. They're like, do you guys feel a really deep ultra infrasound tone going off at like 3 a.m. And everyone's like, yup, absolutely. What is this thing? We don't know. Well, they did some research, and apparently it's also, well, it's most likely also the testing of these new diesel generators for a data center that's about to open. So just the noise was pissing off people.
Wow.
Very close to it. And yeah.
So for our listeners today, they should know that around 70% of all global internet traffic passes through Ashburn every day. That's crazy. That's absolute nuts.
It's insane.
The Ashburn area hosts well over 100 dedicated data center facilities backed by millions of square feet of technical space. It serves as the primary network interconnection point for the United States. Wow. I hope the security is tight, right? Because when you get a large concentration of things like that, things could be bad, not that yeah. So let's see, Ashford Data says 136 facilities from 3 operators. Oh my God.
It's amazing, man.
I mean, and then someone said, no, it's a US city with 152 data centers. The number just keeps going up. It's crazy.
Right.
Yeah, it's like data centerville. Meanwhile, out of the East Coast of the US, we're seeing Long Island leaders praise 1-year moratorium on large data centers, right? So people are pushing back, and we mentioned that other story, like across 42 states, there've been uprisers against it. New Jersey Assembly Committee moves to end a $250 million AI data center. This is out of San Jose, California. They're ending it. They advanced legislation to eliminate in uncommitted tax credits for previously authorized AI data center projects. Supporters argued the public funds could produce greater value through other economic development priorities. Well, that's fair enough. So for taxpayers, the debates about whether governments should compete to attract AI infrastructure or require developers to pay the full cost of projects that already have powerful commercial reasons to build. Well, yeah. And then we have Verizon touting a $1 billion deal with Google to connect the data centers, right? Because you just pop this thing down, you got to connect it, really. So it's like the whole IT infrastructure industry is just going through the roof. They're going to provide Google with dark fiber. What's dark fiber? Do you know what dark fiber is? Connecting. I thought it's like optical fiber, but it's dark. Anyway, maybe it's called copper. Maybe copper is called dark fiber. Anyway, if anyone knows, post a comment. Connecting data centers across this network. The AI clusters must move enormous volumes of data, with GPUs, blah, 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 blah. Fiber connectivity is becoming a critical component of the AI supply chain. And we already saw Corning had a massive contract, like a multi-billion-dollar contract for optical fiber as well. So, but here's the thing, a story out of the Register, AI's changed data architecture, but storage hasn't caught up. They're saying that traditional storage systems were designed for isolated applications and predictable data access, not AI systems that must continuously retrieve information from many locations and formats. The result is that costly GPUs can remain idle while systems wait for the data to be located, transferred, normalized, or authorized. The bottleneck may therefore be data fragmentation rather than raw storage speed, or additional processing power. Do you have that? Or is your data mostly so organized you don't have a problem with storage?
Mine? Like my personal data? We're pretty efficient with storage, right? So I think all of DAPIT uses only, I can tell you the exact number. Give me a second. All of DAPIT uses only 2 terabytes of data.
Oh, wow.
Approximately.
That's nothing. I have more in my movie collection than that.
Right. It's because of what we're storing, right? So
right.
Container images, we're storing user history. We're making sure you have the ability to log back in and that kind of stuff. What I will say I am really struggling with is I have one computer with, this is for my personal stuff now, right? A terabyte of data. I have a 3 terabyte backup. And then my second computer has 500 gigs. And for local models and training, it's nothing, man. Nothing. You need like 4 terabytes plus to really play in the game without just constantly pruning and looking over your system and like it being like a very stressful type thing.
Are we talking SSD storage?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And that kind of brings up another story coming out of South Korea. AI reshapes the chip supply chain, with Taiwan exports doubling and moving forward. So you've got TSMC, the big chip semiconductor in South Korea. They're saying that Taiwan's share of Korean semiconductor exports rose sharply, while China's share declined by more than 12 percentage points, which is interesting because there's another story that came out this week about China just putting massive investment in their local semiconductor industries, not only to deal with the whole NVIDIA crap that's going on, but basically to support their own domestic requirements. So, yeah, here we go. Chip maker CXMT vaults to the top of China's valuation with a 466% surge in a Shanghai debut out of Reuters. Shares of their company rose that during their debut after the company completed Asia's largest initial public offering of 2026. The surge gave the company a market share of approximately 488 billion and briefly made it the most valuable company listed in mainland China. It's strategically important because memory is essential, obviously, to AI accelerators, servers, blah, blah, blah. And it's part of China's effort to reduce dependence on foreign semiconductor suppliers, NVIDIA, and others, maybe, and TSMC, maybe, which brings up that geopolitical thing between China and Taiwan. But essentially, they're mobilizing domestic capital around semiconductor independence. So they're pushing that hard. And as we've seen them do in the aviation industry, in transportation, in road building, in almost everything, when they start to put money into it, it explodes.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, they're really good at state investment.
Yeah, and they're really good at focusing and building that stuff fast. Yeah. I'm just seeing what else. Tons of story around chatbots in health. I'm going to have to cull that out because there's just way too many. Oh, here's the story I mentioned before. Purpose-built mental health chatbots show promise. Out of healthcarefinancenews.com, out of the Society for Digital Mental Health, they're arguing that chatbots specifically designed for behavioral healthcare can provide evidence-based assistance to selected patient population. So nice story that they're actually starting to figure out and deliver something that can help people versus, that's kind of certified, that helps them out. And then, of course, China's cracking down on AI-powered companions. They introduced a whole bunch of rules targeting emotionally immersive AI systems that simulate friendship, romance, or family relationships. They have to have disclosure, crisis intervention, usage reminders, risk assessment, and restrictions. So to the person who posted about governance, it seems like, in some ways, it seems like if you look at what the Chinese are reporting, and that's, you can only go by that, it appears that there seems to be a lot more regulatory stuff and governance stuff happening in China and maybe that's just a function of the one-party government, than, out of the US where we're kind of bifurcated between the Fed and the states. Right. So governance is happening, but again, as we've all said, so many times across so many podcasts, it's a lagging indicator, when unfortunately at the moment, as these companies, like today's topic, basically are acting like startups while they're having massive infrastructure sort of impacts.
No, I agree completely. And I think what upsets me about our current state of politics or our current state of regulation is we're always asking, how do we do this? Oh man, these kids are getting hurt. How do we fix this? Oh no, these people are all addicted and there's AI psychosis. What do we do? But the rest of the world's we just do this.
Yeah.
And it helps.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We talked about robotics. There's a ton of stories popping up. Actually, this week I saw a fairly significant increase in the number of stories around humanoid robots and robotics in general.
We don't even know what's coming.
And so here's a story out of Meta. So maybe it's self-serving vendor hype. But they're saying reimagining independence, how Meta's AI models are helping the University of Pittsburgh transform assistive robotics. So they're incorporating Meta's, software stuff and their vision models into a robotic mobility platform designed to help people with disabilities navigate and manipulate objects, which is great. Processing visual information directly on the device could allow the system to recognize curbs, doors, cups, unexpected hazards without depending on continuous internet connectivity. And the project standard is deeply human. Performance is not measured by benchmark accuracy alone, but by whether a system can operate reliability in the unpredictability of everyday life. So, we're getting Tesla, full self-service driving coming to disability, which is awesome, right? I would rather that was kind of more important than the Tesla stuff, but at least there's lots of stories around that where people who have disabilities are starting to become, through use of AI and robotics, starting to become sort of fuller participants in society as a consequence. And I think if there's anything that's good about AI, it's that.
I agree. Well, I mean, there's many, many good things about AI. But with that being said, I always said when I was younger and I was like in school, if you want to see like the next technological wave, look towards like the currently disabled and the technology that is being used to help them. And what do we see with Neuralink? The first thing we use is a guy who was locked in, right? We're seeing it with, ironically, like, the same technology that's going to be used to control these large mech things, motors and forklifts that'll be like those things are the same things that we use to connect a broken panel on a spine, where at the bottom before the break, they attach an electrode and they teach the user to resend the signal to the new it skips the broken part and it just bridges the gap. Same type of thing. It's fascinating.
Now, it's interesting that a school district in the US recently announced they were going to introduce an AI-powered humanoid robot teacher called Sally. Okay?
Saw that.
But the New York State United Teachers Union called for statewide policies, and basically there was such a backlash against it that the school district abandoned that. And so the union's particularly concerned about devices designed to mimic human relationship and the absence of clear rules governing privacy, safety, educational purpose, accountability, and emotional influence or governance. So they're warning that the proposal was stopped by publicity and public concern, not any law or policy of this state, because none exists. So that's what we're starting to see as well, where, they're like, oh, AI, great, let's do this and this. And there's no policy or anything because it's like no one ever thought you could have that. I mean, if you want to hire a humanoid robot as a teacher for your school, you can do that because there's no laws against it. In fact, no one ever thought it would happen.
We haven't even figured out data privacy. Law. Right? We've had 20 years to do that. We really have a crisis of governance going on in most of the Western world. Ironically, there's two places that do a great job of it: California and Europe. And they seem to be driving the safety standards of everyone else for whatever.
And China's governance stuff as well.
But they don't influence our, you're totally correct, right? But like the reason this here is a USB-C port and not an Apple proprietary port is because Europe said, stop doing that or you can't sell it. And then rather Apple build two different models, they were like, all right, fine. And
I would argue that's just a function of where China currently is in the whole geopolitical schema. Right? There's some surveys being done where they surveyed U.S. citizens, and the perception is that the Chinese are ahead of us in AI technology. They're ahead of us in many, many things. So that's starting to bubble up, right? For anyone who's been to China and actually gone through, I went through in 2010, and I was just blown away by the whole thing. It's crazy how advanced they're moving forward. So I think we'll see that more and more. And yes, while California and Europe do have a lot of influence in the US, because they do lead in a lot of ways. I'm starting to see a lot of stuff popping up where, stories around China doing networking around the planet with different countries and different groupings where I think they'll become far more influential across time. But we're now coming up to time. So thank you, Achilles, for your input and discussion. And thanks to Ryan for his popping in and popping out. It was great. Let me now wind up everyone for today, and we'll kind of put a bow around this and see where we are. Thank you, sir. We'll chat soon. Let's see. So this week, AI stopped looking like a single technology in a big way and began looking like a new operating system for civilization. AI is reorganizing political power, industrial finance, energy infrastructure, healthcare, creativity, relationships, work, identity, and everyday decisions people once made for themselves. But I think that the opportunity for all of us is really enormous, from restoring independence to people with disabilities, to improving medical access, and even expanding human creativity. Then again, the danger is equally human. Authority can disappear into software, empathy can become a product, and convenience can quietly become control. I think our task is not to reject the future or surrender to it. It's really to remain present enough to shape it, brave enough to question it, and hopeful enough to build systems that make human beings more capable, more connected, and really free. And remember, we're not predicting the future. We really are debugging it together. And that's it for this week. Stay informed, stay curious, stay conscious of the systems being built around us, and come back next Tuesday when we'll once again move beyond the announcements and examine who gains power, what infrastructure is being created, which humans' assumptions are changing, and where control is quietly changing. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you again soon.